What's up, everyone? This is Lucas Ross Sports, and you're watching my Lucas Ross Sports channel, and it's time to give you the New Year's Six bowl games after week number 6 of the 2022 college football season. Basically, how this video works, I will give you 4 out of the 6 bowl games from New Year's Six bowls, and I will go through the best projections that I could tell you. And basically, this is how, just based off of the teams, how they played this past weekend. And of course, coming into this year, I had, some New Year's Six bowl predictions that I did. And basically, I've gotten, not really every single game right, but we're going to see what the projections look like after week number 6. And I made a few changes to these, 4 out of the 6 bowl games. And basically, I'm just giving you the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl, Cotton Bowl, and Sugar Bowl. I'll give you my college football playoff projections this week, coming out this Thursday. So let's get right into it here with the New Year's Six bowl games. And we start with the Rose Bowl. I made it pretty much a change here. It's USC out of the Pac-12 versus Penn State out of the Big Ten. Looking at this one, I really had to make a change to this one. USC, they're ranked in the top 10, still undefeated. Penn State also ranked in the top 10. They're undefeated as well. Both of these teams don't really have a big challenge. Both of these teams are pretty even on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I would give it probably to Penn State. Penn State, though, they have a tough challenge this weekend ahead as they play Michigan on the road. That is going to be a big-time matchup, and that's going to determine if Penn State is a top 25 team or not. But I think, they are after, surprising a lot of people to begin the year. I thought this Penn State team was a little bit down this year, but they proved me wrong. USC, the same thing. I thought they wouldn't be undefeated at this point, but the offense is pretty explosive. Both of these teams are pretty even, and I got to go with USC in the Rose Bowl. Last week, if you saw my video, I had them in the Sugar Bowl against Tennessee. I made a change here, though, with the Rose Bowl, and, obviously I had Clemson in the, in this Rose Bowl, but it might be on my playoff projections coming up this week, so you probably will see that coming up this week. That is the Rose Bowl. It's USC versus Penn State. If I was going to make a prediction on this game, I would choose USC because of the offense. I think the offense is explosive enough to really dominate Penn State down the stretch. But it will be a high-scoring game if this game were to happen. Let's go to the Sugar Bowl. And a change here, but not a change here with Tennessee. I had Michigan versus Tennessee in the Sugar Bowl here. Michigan, I know they haven't performed well in the past 2 games. You look at the game, against Indiana, they were pretty tied up with them a little bit, but, they still took care of business, but they didn't really show me enough to put them, at number 4 on the list. So you're probably going to see a change with the college football playoff projections this week because Clemson might be in that category. The Sugar Bowl, though, here between Michigan and Tennessee should be a really good matchup. Both offenses are pretty explosive. You look at Michigan, the first 3 games of the year, they were pretty explosive on that side of the ball. Tennessee, they've been explosive all season long. Tennessee's only toughest test so far is the game against Pitt in week number 2. And, Tennessee has a tough matchup this weekend against Alabama ahead. That's going to be a big one. That's going to determine if Tennessee is a New Year's Six bowl team, or maybe not a New Year's Six bowl team, or maybe a playoff contender. If Tennessee wins that game against Alabama, Bryce Young is, out of that game. Alabama could potentially lose to Tennessee. Tennessee, though, I'm pretty impressed with what they've done this year. Michigan, the same thing. These teams are both undefeated, and that's why I got them in the Sugar Bowl. Big Ten versus SEC matchup here. And this could really be a big matchup if this game were to happen. If I was going to make a prediction, I would choose Tennessee. Tennessee's gotten better on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, basically, they show that in that LSU game, blowing them out. And it wasn't just because of the offense, it was because of the defense. They really improved after that bye week, and I think Tennessee deserves to be put still here in the Sugar Bowl. So Tennessee, I think, would win this game if this game were to happen. In the Cotton Bowl, I got Oklahoma State versus UCLA. Both teams undefeated. Oklahoma State coming off some big couple wins, in the Big 12, against Baylor. And then, of course, this past weekend. So Oklahoma State, I like what they're doing so far. They're pretty much the top team out of the Big 12 besides TCU. And I got to tell you, Oklahoma State plays TCU this weekend. That is going to be a big-time matchup. Oklahoma State pretty much, at the top of the Big 12. And that game right there this weekend proves who is at the top of the Big 12. If TCU wins it, they could possibly be in a New Year's Six bowl game in my next week's projections. And if Oklahoma State wins it, they will still be in the, New Year's Six bowls. Don't get me wrong, I had Oklahoma State, finishing close to last in the preseason, but they've proven me wrong this season. The defense is kind of a little bit sluggish, but I think the offense is good enough to really handle that speed of UCLA. If this game were to happen, and speaking of UCLA, they came in with the easiest schedule in all of college football coming into this season, and they have proven that they are a real threat in the Pac-12. They could possibly make the Pac-12 championship. Looking at this past weekend when they defeated Utah, they really proved me wrong, and I think UCLA is a New Year's Six bowl contender after that win over Utah. So I think pretty much a change there. I had Utah, last week in a New Year's Six bowl game. Now I've taken them out, and I put UCLA in this category with Oklahoma State. If I was going to make a prediction on this game, I would choose Oklahoma State because I think, the teams will be better by the end of the year, and I think Oklahoma's defense will be improved by the end of the year. So that is the Cotton Bowl. Let's go now to the fourth and last New Year's Six bowl game, and it still is the same one in the Orange Bowl. It's Oregon versus Ole Miss. I think both of these teams are pretty even compared to last weekend and the weekend before. You look at Oregon, they have improved ever since that loss to Georgia. Ole Miss coming off some couple big wins. I mean, Kentucky wasn't a big win, but they won that game by 3 points. The defense played pretty well in Kentucky. And then they had a big win over Vanderbilt. They were in that game pretty tight, in the first half, but Ole Miss pulled away. And I'd see this Ole Miss team is getting a lot better as the season goes on. Ole Miss still has to play Alabama on the schedule. I mean, they could end up losing, a regular season game sometime or another. I mean, they still have to play, all these other teams, out of the SEC West. Mississippi State's been pretty good this year. Alabama's been pretty good. Oregon has to still play, all these other teams in the Pac-12. I think the schedule really sets up nicely for Oregon, to have a 11-1 season and possibly go on to the Pac-12 championship where they could meet UCLA or any other team in the Pac-12 championship. If I was going to make a prediction on this game, it would be a high-scoring matchup here. I'm going to give it to Oregon. I think Oregon, has performed pretty well ever since that win over BYU. And I think Oregon has enough to beat Ole Miss if this game were to happen. But this is simply a projection. This is simply not a prediction. I mean, just based off of that, of those games last weekend, I would predict Oregon to win this game. That concludes my New Year's Six bowl projections after week number 6 of the 2022 college football season. We are now heading into week number 7. We got some big games this weekend. And remember my schedule, we will have Upset Alert tomorrow. We will have the college football playoff projections this Thursday. That is how the schedule will work. And remember, we have a lot of games coming up this weekend. And really, we could see some differential in the college football playoff rankings as well. The college football playoff rankings will be coming your way in November. So stay tuned for that. And stay tuned here for more on the Lucas Ross Sports Channel.